Remember those long afternoons spent hunched over your boombox, finger poised on the record button? Creating the perfect mixtape wasn't just a hobby in the 70s, it was an art form. And like any great art, it required patience, skill, and more than a little luck. Picture this. You're sprawled on your bedroom floor, radio tuned to your favorite station. You've got a blank cassette loaded and ready to go. Now comes the hard part, waiting. You might spend hours listening for that one special song, ready to pounce the moment you hear those first few notes. But here's the kicker. Timing was everything. Hit that record button too late and you'd miss the intro. Too early and you'd catch the DJ's voice. And don't even get us started on those mid-song announcements. Nothing was worse than a perfect track ruined by a peppy voice cutting in to remind you what station you were listening to. The challenges didn't stop there. You had to contend with limited song choices, relying on whatever the radio decided to play, and forget about skipping tracks you didn't like. Each mistake meant rewinding and starting over, hoping your timing would be better next time. Creating a mixtape wasn't just about collecting songs, though. It was about crafting an experience. You had to consider the flow, the mood, how one song transitioned into the next. It was like being your own DJ, curating a personal playlist long before Spotify made it easy. All this effort shaped how we appreciated music back then. We didn't just passively consume, we actively engaged with every song. We learned to recognize intros, memorized lyrics, and developed a deep understanding of different artists and genres. It made us true music aficionados. As your tape neared completion, the anticipation would build. Would all the songs fit? Would the sound quality be good enough? There was always that nervous energy as you listened back, hoping everything had recorded properly. But oh, the satisfaction when it all came together. That finished mixtape became more than just a collection of songs. It was a personal statement, a snapshot of your musical tastes and emotions at that moment in time. And let's not forget the ultimate use for these musical masterpieces: gifts. A mixtape for your crush wasn't just a present, it was a declaration. Each song was carefully chosen to convey a message, to reveal something about yourself. It was like sharing a piece of your soul, all wrapped up in a plastic case. Creating mixtapes might seem quaint in our age of instant playlists and unlimited streaming, but those of us who lived through it know there was something special about the process, something that made the music mean more. You've heard of FOMO, fear of missing out, but in the 1970s, kids experienced a different kind of television anxiety. Picture this. It's Saturday morning and you're racing downstairs in your pajamas. Why? Because if you're late, you might miss the only chance you'll have all week to watch your favorite cartoons. Back then, TV wasn't something you could access anytime you wanted. We had a handful of channels and each one followed a strict schedule. No pausing, no rewinding, and definitely no binge watching entire seasons in one go. If you missed an episode of your favorite show, tough luck. You'd have to wait for a rerun, which could be months away. Can you imagine telling a kid today that they can only watch cartoons on Saturday mornings? They'd probably look at you like you've grown a second head. But for us, it was normal. We'd wake up early, grab a bowl of sugary cereal, and plop ourselves in front of the TV for hours of animated bliss. This scarcity made TV watching a special event. When a show came on, you made sure you were there to see it. Families would gather around the television set, turning it into a shared experience. We'd laugh together, discuss plot twists, and eagerly anticipate next week's episode. And speaking of anticipation, let's talk about TV seasons. Shows would run for a set number of episodes, then go off the air for months. The wait between seasons was agonizing, but it also built excitement. We'd spend the summer speculating about what might happen next, making the return of our favorite shows feel like a major event. Believe it or not, this limited choice had its perks. With only a few options, it was easier to decide what to watch. No endless scrolling through streaming services paralyzed by too many choices. Plus, when everyone watched the same shows, it created a shared cultural experience. The next day at school, You could bet everyone would be talking about last night's episode of Happy Days or Maz H. This appointment viewing shaped our routines and conversations. Families planned dinner around TV schedules, and phrases like, "Don't call me during the Brady Bunch," were common. We had TV Guide magazines to plan our viewing, and the arrival of the new issue was an event in itself. Looking back, it's amazing how much TV shaped our lives. We may have had fewer options, but each show felt more special because of it. The anticipation, the shared experience, the cultural conversations, it all added up to something unique that today's on-demand world can't quite replicate. Imagine a world where you couldn't screen your calls, couldn't text to avoid awkward conversations, and couldn't hide behind emojis. Welcome to the Wild West of 1970s telephone communication. How did we survive? The answer might surprise you and make you grateful for your smartphone. Back then, most homes had just one phone line, and it was a shared experience. That single landline was the family's lifeline to the outside world. We'd gather around when it rang, wondering who was on the other end. It could be anyone, a friend with exciting news, a relative calling long distance, or even a stranger with the wrong number. The anticipation was real. Every ring set our hearts racing. Without caller ID, answering the phone was like opening a mystery gift. Would it be something you wanted, or a telemarketer trying to sell you encyclopedias? The suspense was part of the thrill, but it wasn't all fun and games. We had to master the art of the phone voice. You know, that slightly higher, extra polite tone we'd use when answering. It was all about making a good impression, just in case it was someone important on the other end. And let's not forget phone etiquette. We learned to introduce ourselves properly, speak clearly, and never, ever interrupt the person on the other end. Phone conversations shaped our social lives in ways that might seem strange today. We'd spend hours chatting with friends, twirling the cord around our fingers as we gossiped about school or made weekend plans. Long-distance relationships meant expensive, carefully timed calls where every minute counted. The most nerve-wracking calls? Those to your crush, of course. You'd rehearse what to say, take a deep breath, and dial the number. Then came the moment of truth. Who would answer? If it was them, would you freeze up? And if it was their parent? Well, that was a whole different kind of stress. Speaking of which, one user shared this cringe-worthy memory. Calling a girl and her dad answers the phone. That was rough, kids. Can you imagine? No texting to break the ice, no emojis to soften the blow. Just you, your shaky voice, and your crush's intimidating father on the other end of the line. But you know what? Those awkward moments and anxious calls helped us grow. We learned to communicate clearly, to think on our feet, and to handle uncomfortable situations with grace. Sure, today's technology makes things easier, but there was something special about those voice-to-voice connections. Remember when "go play outside" wasn't a punishment, but a thrilling invitation to adventure? In the 1970s, kids disappeared for hours, roaming neighborhoods like intrepid explorers, but this freedom came with risks and rewards that might make modern helicopter parents faint. What exactly were we doing out there? For starters, we were out there a lot. Kids in the 70s spent an average of 3 to 5 hours a day playing outdoors. Can you imagine that now? Today's children barely squeeze in an hour of outside time between their screens and structured activities. Back then, parents practically shoved us out the door after breakfast. "Don't come back until dinner," they'd say, and we'd take off like a shot. No cell phones, no GPS trackers, just our imaginations and the whole neighborhood as our playground. We'd gather in backyards, empty lots, or local parks, ready to create our own adventures. Games like tag, hide and seek, and kickball were staples. But we didn't need organized sports to have fun. We made up our own games, with rules that changed on a whim. One day, the big oak tree was home base. The next, it was a fortress we had to defend. Our bikes weren't just transportation, they were trusty steeds carrying us to imaginary lands. This unstructured play wasn't just fun. It was shaping us in ways we didn't realize. We were learning to communicate, negotiate, and solve problems on our own. When conflicts arose, and they did, we had to figure out how to resolve them without running to an adult. It wasn't always pretty, but it taught us valuable social skills. The freedom to roam also meant freedom to take risks. We climbed trees, built rickety forts, and dared each other to jump from ever higher places. Sure, we got scrapes and bruises, but we also learned our limits and how to assess danger. It's a far cry from today's carefully padded playgrounds and constant supervision. One person who grew up in the 70s recalled, "We would disappear for hours, exploring the neighborhood, climbing trees, and making up games. It was a time of adventure and imagination, without the constant worry of adult supervision." That sense of discovery and independence is hard to replicate in today's structured world. Of course, times have changed. The free-range parenting of the 70s would raise eyebrows today. Safety concerns and changing societal norms have led to more protective parenting styles. But in gaining safety, have we lost something valuable? Those long, unsupervised days outdoors shaped a generation. We learned independence, creativity, and resilience. We developed a sense of community and connection to our environment. And we had fun. The kind of unscripted, imagination-fueled fun that's hard to come by in our digital age.